Okay, welcome back. We will now begin with Module 5, the Chemical Contaminant Rules. Okay, my batteries. This module deals with the primary and secondary chemical contaminants that we're concerned with as it relates to the Safe Drinking Water Act. So upon completion of this module, participant will be able to define the chemical contaminant rules that are in place. How do we get there? What are our enabling objectives? Well, first of all, we have to know, again, from whence we come. And so we'll look at the regulatory overview of this particular rule. We'll look at the monitoring requirements. And again, this is very vital to know what we are to be monitoring for, the frequency and all of that. Maximum contaminant levels will be revisited. We may not go into great details, but we'll give you an overview. And again, it's an awesome chart in your book that gives you the goals as well as the limits there. And we will talk about very specific contaminants that are of major concern, and then treatment options for the various contaminants. In other words, when we're talking treatment options, what are the best available treatment technologies that are out there in order to make sure that we're complying with the rules and regs. All right, as far as the regulatory overview, we look at these chemical contaminants because of a congressional mandate in '87. We talked about earlier, the whole basis was the study surveys done of the various water sources and the chemical contaminants that were found. 65 contaminants for review for adverse health effects were identified in '87, and part of the Safe Drinking Water Act was putting into play and establishing maximum contaminant levels for each chemical. Now, when we mention maximum contaminant level, what do we mean by that?
It's the limit to where there's an associated health.
Super. Just want to make sure that you remember that. And so that level, that's the legal threshold limit. That's what's allowed in there. Anything above there, there's a known health effect with that particular contaminant. And so all of these limits are set in the Safe Drinking Water Act, and they are usually expressed milligrams per liter or micrograms. Parts per million is another connotation, and there is an equivalency of 1 to 1. So in some instances you'll see ppm, other milligrams per liter, but know that there's the same equivalency for both of those. Your limits or levels of concerns are set close to the health goals as possible. Remember the health goal, maximum contaminant level goal, not EPA enforceable, but this is the level which we know there are no health effects associated with that particular contaminant. All right, there are 3 contaminant groups: inorganic chemicals, synthetic organic chemicals, volatile organic chemicals. Inorganic chemicals, these are things that are not man-made or does not contain carbon. These are inert, non-living chemicals that we're concerned with. Organic chemicals usually contain carbon. There are some that are man-made, synthetic. There are some that are, well, quite a lot that are naturally occurring. Here we see the synthetic group. And then volatile, those chemicals that were volatilized at a certain temperature there. Your hexavalent organic chemicals is not a group itself. Now you see on page 5-4, table 5.1, regulated chemical contaminants. Now, many of us have the bottled water in front of us. And a lot of people like the bottled water because of convenience. But please note, most bottled water is not as highly regulated as our public drinking water. And that is one of the statements that we're also putting in all the CCRs, again, to educate people so they can make informed decisions. They see this nice bottled water and think, man, that's good to go. But you don't have the regulation, you don't have the disinfection requirement in place for that bottled water. So keep that in mind. Bottled water, like anything else, can be susceptible to chemical contaminants. Huh? Now you say that it's cheaper. Can I get you to think about something for me? How much did you pay for that 0.5 liter?
50 cents.
And that's good. It's not even $1 here.
No.
Usually we pay $1, $1.09 for it.
50
But even let's say 50 cents, a liter would cost $1, right? How many liters make a gallon? Round off. 4. She said 4. Yeah, 3.874. So now you've paid $4 for 1 gallon. Now, think about the water bill you pay. How much do you pay per, and usually it's not per gallon, but per thousands gallons. How much you pay per 1,000 gallons?
Is it like
Last month it was
$4?
$4. For 1,000, $4
$4
versus $4 for 1 gallon of bottled water that's not regulated. Do the math. Not only the math, but what about the safety, the oversight? Your bottle, your water and sell. Yes, sir.
So which one do you prefer? Like us in example, we have boiling water, no this, so we prefer to buy the water or?
Yeah. Now, in a case like that, and I'm glad you brought that up, Mickey, very good point. When you are under a boil water notice, what does that say? That you need to use an alternative source until we can rectify the situation. That's the reason we put boil water in. Or the other alternative is to do what? Every drop of water that you're going to use for drinking, for cooking, any type of consumption, to take it to a rolling boil 1 to 2 minutes, and then it's good to use, because that boil, once you get it above, again, that certain temperature, which is 100 degrees Celsius, that ensures that all the pathogenic organism or organic matter has been taken care of. And you're under the notice because of organic contaminants. So you can do either or. A bottle, which is an alternative source, or do as they say, boil your water. Yeah. So that's a special case when I know I have contaminants in my water that may be detrimental to my health. Then yes, I need to do something to ensure that the quality of water that I'm taking in is better than what's being delivered.
What about 5 gallons of water that is being sold by the company that they treated or that they have out over? Is that all right for us? Or?
I feel very strongly, and what we will see when we start getting into the membrane technology, if you want a pure water, one of the best technology on the market out there today is RO, reverse osmosis. It can remove matter up to 0.00 microns, and no other systems that we have out there can reach that type of purity right now. So as long as, again, we're checking the integrity of the membrane and it's being periodically cleaned, and we have that data to back that up, the water that's produced is of great quality, better quality than many other places. So if you all have a system where you have reverse osmosis, you're above the cut. There are some systems in place now that's taking treated wastewater. And you all know what I mean by treated wastewater.
Yeah.
We've mapped the state. They're taking treated wastewater, taking it through an RO system, and then selling it back to the customer. There is no new water. So they're just doing it a lot quicker, returning it back to the customer a lot quicker. And it's better than the quality of water, the standards that are out there. In some cases, I've heard people, because the reverse osmosis creates such a clean water, they mix it back with their regular drinking water just to add impurities back into it. Because it's going to remove just about anything. Yeah. Some of the impurities are good for us. Yeah. All right, good questions there. Why are we concerned with these chemical contaminants? Again, it all boils back to health. We want to make sure we're the champions of the environment, that we produce a quality water that will not be harmful to our consumers. We see the same health concerns as we saw in the previous chapter, dealing with cancer, organ damage, circulatory, nervous system problems, reproductive disorders, and again, because of nitrates, all the fertilizers, agricultural products, we see the blue baby syndrome. And if you're a public water system, and we explained what a public water system was, 15 service connections, at least 25 individuals, for a minimum of 60 days out of the year. You also have to monitor for nitrates and nitrites. So the chemical contaminant rule is applicable to all community water systems, non-transient, non-community water systems. They must monitor your inorganic, your synthetic organic, as well as volatiles, in addition to the nitrates and nitrites. There is a standard monitoring framework that EPA has put together. And again, this is not in your book, but is on that disc that you have. And this gives you the timetable of monitoring all of these contaminants here. Phase 2 of the rule went into effect January '91, and the purpose was to standardize and simplify the monitoring requirements that are in place. And again, this wraps it up in a nutshell. That's the reason I love these quick reference guides whenever you can get them. For inorganic contaminants, there are 15 of them that must be monitored and that's regulated. You have 51 of your synthetic organic compounds, volatiles, and 4 radionuclides that you have to do the analysis for. Who's covered? Very straight to the point. All public water systems must do nitrate and nitrite. All public water systems, community as well as non-community. In addition to the nitrates and nitrites, community water systems must also do your inorganic contaminants, synthetic, volatile organics, and radionuclides. Your non-community or non-transient non-community must do nitrate, nitrite, in addition to your inorganic, synthetic, and volatile. So with your non-transient non-community, they don't have to do the radionuclides. And when you think about that, it disturbs me. I don't know how you feel about it, but this is Bessie's little soapbox here. Earlier you told me non-transient, non-community systems. Give me an example of those again.
Like a restaurant,
Schools, very good. Factories, very good. Hospitals, workplaces, things like that. All right. Let's take a rural school, for instance. Again, the nitrite rule was put into place to protect who? The children, the very young. Yeah, because their bodies are more susceptible to taking in the nitrogen as opposed to oxygen. And although, again, they fall under that umbrella of non-transient, they don't have to test for nitrates and nitrates and nitrites. So to me, that's but that's one of the things when you talk to EPA, they're looking at, and it may be changed in the near future. But I think that's a critical point there. If anybody should be testing for that, it should fall under that group too. All right, the other thing is, on that quick reference guide, it kind of wraps up all those pages that Pago was looking at earlier, saying, gosh, there's so many pages in Module 5. This wraps it up in a nutshell. Depending on, again, which inorganic or volatile or synthetic you're looking at, this gives you the frequency, the period. So that's why instead of reading 50 chapters, 50 pages, you can look at a table like this and and it wraps it up. For instance, if I'm dealing with inorganic contaminants there and I have groundwater and I'm doing the analysis and I'm below the triggered level or the MCL, then for my second cycle, because that's what this framework time here, I only have to pull one within an 8-year, well really it's a 9-year period. No waiver, I'm doing it once every 3 years. Keep in mind, for groundwater, we're testing once every 3 years anyway. Okay? But with that waiver, I have an exceptional system. I don't have a problem with this. So I apply for a waiver or an exemption. They give me longer to do the analysis. Does that make sense? So that's why once you understand the quick reference guides, you know right away how to use them. They become very beneficial to you. All right, surface water. Like the groundwater, if it's below the triggered level, with no waiver, I'm doing it once a year because that's the time frame for all surface water contaminants, once a year. If I have a waiver, I can do it once every 9 years. But I have to have exceptional quality in order to get that waiver. And let me throw something else out. You have to request the waiver. They don't just give it to you. They'll let you keep doing it every year. No hits whatsoever. But if you don't request the waiver, you don't get the waiver. See? Yeah, you gotta request it. Edit it? Yeah, on your desk. It's on your desk. Yeah, we've supplied. And we have that not only for these chemical contaminants, but lead and copper. Every module that's in there, there's a quick reference guide. And I'll plop it in the computer here, and so you can see that it's there. Okay, good. Came back. All right. And it goes on to, you see how to read it. Now, if I have 4 asterisks, for instance, groundwater or surface water that's above the level, notice what happens for my inorganic. If I'm consistently, reliably less than the MCL for groundwater system, I'm still doing once every 3 years and once a year for surface. But once I get greater than the MCL, how many asterisks or how many stars do you see up there?
4.
4. So that means I'm doing that analysis how often?
Every quarter.
Every quarter. You get the idea. So this really simplifies things for you of how. So when I exceed the level, then my frequency of analysis go up. And it even have the years all the way out to 2019, so you can't go wrong. Questions, and it's the same for nitrate, trite, your radionuclides, and even asbestos. Even for systems that say, well, I don't have any AC pipe. Do you all have AC pipe?
A lot.
You have a lot. Oh.
Well, in
Yeah.
only one system we have
Exceed.
But we are we on the 9-year? Yeah,
You're on the 9-year, which means that you've been well below the MCL. So that's a good thing. So the quick reference guides, they're excellent as to keeping you on track.
We just recertified for another 9 years.
Okay, and that's the key word. You have to request that certification or you don't get it. All right, if you go to that website, you can get that reference guides as well as many others. You don't even have to go to the website. Just plop in the CD from TEEX. All right, and this right here you do have in your book. Again, it just gives you the compliance cycle for the first, second, third period. That reference or framework started with the second period because that's where we were. Okay, with your waivers. Again, waivers, exemptions simply reduce the sampling frequency, but in order to reduce the sampling frequency, you have to show you've been a stellar participant and you've had no hits once whatsoever. And with that, your reductions can be every 3 years, 6 years, or 9 years. And that's where you want to be. Okay. For specified contaminants, you have to show vulnerability assessment. In other words, the contaminant has not been used in your area. I don't have AC pipe if I'm doing asbestos. Or if I'm doing lead and copper, I have no lead service line, or nor do I use it with my fixtures and things like that. Or you must prove the system is not susceptible to contamination. And how do you bag all of that up? You do the analysis.
We try to do that for, pesticides,
Okay,
but we couldn't, we have people, where our wells, our results come back and they're non-detect or pesticides, but because we use the pesticides, we apply it to our plantations and
Yeah.
stuff, so we couldn't
can get away from that. Okay. All right, keep in mind the MCLs are legally enforceable. The whole purpose behind it is not about more regulation EPA want to put on us, but we're the protectors of the public health. And it's all about making sure we're doing that by ensuring that that level of contaminant is not in our drinking water. And we saw in figure 5.1, again, the list of contaminants and the potential health effects from long-term exposure. Now, they give you long-term exposure, which means chronic exposure, but there are some of these that are on this list that have very acute and very fast-acting. And of course, you have to work toward those accordingly. All right, your drinking water, and this trips some people out here, your drinking water can be expected to contain small amounts of arsenic, fluoride, nitrate, radium, and uranium. Why? Because of the rock source. If it's groundwater, again, water is a universal solvent. So it's raining out there. As that water flows over and through the ground, it's picking up impurities that's being dissolved into water. And so based on your soil content, you may have high levels of any of those contaminants, but every water source will have minute or small amount of those contaminants there. Arsenic is a big one of some concern because over the last 5 years, they dropped the limit on us. They went from an MCL of 0.05 to what? What's the new limit for our arsenic? 0.01. Yeah. So that was a huge drop there. And arsenic can be naturally occurring in some of our soil formation. Why is it important to us? Well, again, it is a health issue at very small concentration there. It is a semi-metal element. It's odorless and tasteless. In other words, when it's in the water, I'm not going to be able to detect or smell that it's there as if I had hydrogen sulfide. I can smell, hey, something's wrong with this water here. And again, it enters the water from your natural deposit in the earth or from agricultural or industrial practices that may be going on in the area. Now, most of your industries must have some type of treatment system before they can return the water even to the city's collection system. They have to have their pre-treatment prior to that. So arsenic is one of concern. Health effect, it will damage your skin, circulatory problems. Also, you have the big C, the cancer risk that everyone do not like to hear. The goal is to have none in the water, 0. The MCL is 0.01 or 10 parts per billion. And again, that's the new limit as of years ago. So, how does arsenic enter the drinking water? We've already said erosion from natural deposits. If you have agricultural activities going on, runoff from your orchards, or runoff from glass or electric production waste. Now, under the emergency planning and community right to know, facility must report annually on their release of the chemical. In other words, they must monitor it, not only monitor it, but that's public information and report it. Fluoride is another contaminant of concern. And again, depending on what side of the fence you're on this, it can be a very heated debate as to whether or not to add, because most groundwater systems add fluoride. Why? Because they tell you what, man, it's going to prevent tooth decay. And so in the early years, we saw it added in our toothpaste, added in our drinking water, and even now you can buy water infused with fluoride. Yeah, so you're getting it from all different places now. And it's a good thing, it's been proven. Small dosage does prevent tooth decay. However, when you start getting it in those higher ranges, and East Texas, we have an area very, very high in fluoride. And most people walk around that's been using it for years. You can tell by the staining on their teeth. And it can get so bad, it's not just the brown staining, but literally pitting away where their teeth look rotten. And they have very good hygiene, but it's the fluoride content in the water. Okay? So when you look at the primary list, the MCL is 4 on your primary. Secondary list, it's a 2 milligrams per liter. All right, it gets into our water. It's dissolved into groundwater as it moves through gaps and pores if your rock contains that particular element. It's naturally occurring also from fertilizer or aluminum factories. And it's added. Hydrofluoride acid is added to the water in some cases where it's between the level of 0.7 and 1 milligram per liter. Yeah, hydrofluoric acid. That's one of the forms that they, or silicofluoride is another form that it's added in. And that's some nasty stuff if you ever had to work with it. Make sure you have your PPE. Do you all add it to your groundwater system? No. Okay. Huh? It's some nasty stuff. Yeah, in very concentrated form. All right, nitrates is another chemical of concern. Again, it's used a lot. How do we get the nice big crop that we all love in order to feed the world and reduce starvation? We fertilize. Is there a catchment basin for all of this water that we use when we irrigate? No. So where's that water with all the chemicals going? Into our aquifers and to the surface runoff. Which means what? Now that's another contaminant we have to be of concern with. With your nitrates and nitrite, it's the blue baby syndrome, because infants below the age of 6 months are very susceptible. Their body will take in the nitrogen before it takes in the oxygen, hence starving their red blood cells of oxygen. It's called blue baby because they suffocate. It also affects pregnant women. Usually it's highest, I think, around the 30th week of pregnancy because they're more susceptible to nitrogen at that point. When you look at the regulatory requirements as far as the MCLG and MCL, it's 10. And that's nitrate as nitrogen. Gets into our drinking water from fertilizer use, from leaky septic tanks. Do you all still have the septic tanks?
Yes.
Yes.
All right, when I first got in this field, I didn't tell you all, yeah. I've been in the field for about 25 years, but I got started when I was 3. My dad, 3. My dad still owned a septic tank, and so when I first got in the field, I had the opportunity to go back to Mississippi, which is where I'm from, and to kind of inspect the facilities there because my private company operated the little small town where I grew up. And there was a backup at the house while I was there. And what did Dad do? He went out there to his septic tank and did what? Opened it and let it do what? I said, okay, Dad. Now that I'm in this system, you're going to have to stop doing that or I'm going to have to turn you in because that's an accidental discharge. You can get in trouble for that. But I honestly believe he didn't know. Huh? Yeah, you could, that's illegal to do that. You're not supposed to do that. It's illegal. Yeah. In his case, I really believe he didn't know. And it was just, and some people do know, but yeah. But yeah, you can't do that no more. You can't do that. Gotta get someone out there, have it hauled off. Now, the city of Houston, what they used to do is when there were problems with that or other things such as your grease trap and you wouldn't do what you're supposed to do, they come out and haul it off for you and bill you about $1,500 for it. So with their inspectors, they were up on that, having people going out on a regular basis. And I'm like, you can't do that no more, then I'm in the field there. So that can be a big problem, especially in rural areas that are not tied into their septic system, but still on the water side, tied into the water. All right, and again, it falls on the EPC right to know law also. Questions? Radium is something else. None of that, with all this rock, volcanic rock, you don't have those issues with any type of radionuclides or anything, uranium, none of that cool. Usually, again, these are naturally occurring when they're naturally occurring. Most people think if you have contamination for radioactive material, it's coming from where? Huh? No. Prior to that. That may be it now, but where do most people think?
After Fukushima.
Right, right.
Well, the EPA, they had just given us a waiver for rats. And then after Fukushima, they rescinded it. We did testing everywhere. And in our problem child system,
It showed up.
Yeah, positive for beta particles.
The beta. Now, believe it or not, it has shown up all the way to California. That's a big, but they've actually done the testing and traced it back, and so that's a real issue. Because it has to be, physically removed. So I can see them rescinding on that. Yeah. But a lot of people used to think it's because people dumping or burying their waste, and that's how, but a lot of the radioactive material is naturally occurring. That's how it gets into the water. Again, their unstable nucleus become more stable, it emits energy, and that's the form we want it in, but when it gets into the ionizing, which creates the alpha, beta, and gamma rays, it's an issue there. And so we actually do the analysis for those. It will disrupt DNA function. So 80% is from, of the exposure is from natural sources, and a lot of people are not aware of that. Only 20% from man-made sources. So what California is getting now is from a man-made source there. EPA regulates the gross alpha emitters, the beta particles, and radium-226 and 228 combined, and uranium. We actually had a well up in our area that was contaminated, and again, it was just naturally occurring. So what we had to do is abandon that well, find an alternative source until we had the opportunity to do another well. And the second well that they actually dug was not that far from the original well. So you can have wells in close proximity, totally different soils, totally different problems. Okay, radium uses, nuclear medicines for diagnosis, treatment, or research. It can also be used to kill cancer cells. Yes, ma'am.
Sorry, going back to the one where it says 80% of the exposure is from natural activity. There's the ways to test which was which, whether it's from that 80%
Right.
and from.
Before you dig any well, the well driller is supposed to do an analysis of the soil, do a core, in other words, in layers to see what's there. That will give some indication of some of the contaminants that will show up in your aquifer also. So yes, you can determine exactly where it's coming from. We do have old landfills and things like that where people illegally got rid of their waste. The lining deteriorated over time and it leached out into the groundwater source. They're able to trace that back exactly where it comes from. In Houston, I go back to there around Houston, Kennedy Heights was such a place. And those people actually got paid because it was a dump site, and years down the road, they built a playground there. And all of a sudden, they saw a preponderance of cancer cases. And when they started doing the research soil analysis, it all traced back to a company that had illegally dumped in the area. So there are documented cases of such. Secretly, huh?
There's an episode of CSI, something like that.
Oh, I like CSI too. They usually again draw from the headlines.
Way advanced that sort of stuff. There's an episode of CSI.
And a lot of those episodes are drawn from whatever the headlines with a little tweaking. So yeah, absolutely. Okay, radium is also used to kill pathogens and insects in food. So a wide range of usage there that we may be getting a little from. Again, we see increased health problems as far as cancer risk, kidney problems. Again, the goal is 0, but there are MCLs for each of them that's in place there too. Yeah, picocuries instead of milligrams per liter. Different unit. Okay, the last revisions to the radionuclides was in 2000, and that included uranium. That was not previous among the 4 that was being tested. But again, a lot of it is gotten in because of natural erosion. Okay, treatment options. And now here is where we get into and where you will see the beauty of reverse osmosis, because we're about to go into a lot of treatment techniques now that can be used for removal of all of these. First of all, inorganic, organic contaminants. Inorganic, organic. What did you all tell me organic contaminants were?
Has carbon.
Has carbon. What's another one of the things that we often see with organic? Usually,
Man-made.
huh? Yeah, they are naturally occurring. They're usually living or once was alive, right? So examples of organic would be people, very good. What else? Animals, bacteria, all of that. So how do I neutralize organic contaminants? How do I, That is one way I can do, filter. Yeah, how do I neutralize organic contaminants? Disinfection, very good. So in other words, neutralization, yeah, he said he knew that. Neutralization of organic chemicals can be by disinfection. It can be by introducing a very, 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 very hot source, heating, right? Think of anything boiling, anything that can neutralize little organisms, microorganisms, as well as larger organisms. Now, inorganic, if I boil water because I have a high amount of arsenic in the water, what's that going to do to the arsenic?
It'll dissipate.
In my wildest dreams, I wish I could boil it and it get rid of organic material. But the difference between organic and inorganic, all the boiling, disinfection, whatever you do, will not get rid of inorganic. Inorganic contaminants must physically be removed out of the water. They can't be neutralized, but they have to be physically removed. So that's when we get to the membrane technology, the various types of filtration in order to physically remove inorganic contaminants. So, what are my options that are out there? I can use activated aluminum beds, okay, in order to remove certain chemicals. Now, is it going to remove every chemical? No, it's not. Okay? It can be the best available technology for arsenic, for fluoride, uranium, and selenium. But a lot of those others not going to do much good. There are some issues with each treatment option. You have to weigh the pros and cons to see what works best for the chemistry of your water. So some of the operational issues with your activated aluminum is pH control. And pH, most of your analysis, most of your treatment processes are very much pH dependent. Clogging of these beds, and they must be periodically backwashed. When you all get your microfiltration system up and going, periodically you're going to have to backwash it. What do we mean by backwashing? Because I'm sending water through this membrane, sending water through this membrane, sending water through this membrane. What's going to happen over time? Yeah, very good. So it becomes clogged, all this stuff attached to it. So backwashing is a reverse flow of that water to get rid of all that stuff. And then your activated aluminum must be regenerated, just like if you're using some type of activated carbon, has to be regenerated from time to time. Low cost, minimum operator attention, but again, very limited as far as what it's best used for. Other concerns with your activated aluminum is your wastewater or waste product, so to speak. You're going to have backwash water to deal with. What are you going to do with it?
Put it in the sewer.
I can't just put it in the sewer now, have all this concentrated stuff of arsenic, fluoride, uranium, and selenium.
That's what we do with our,
Oh no, hush, you didn't say that. No.
with our backwash.
Now, if you're going to have an agreement with your wastewater side to put it in the sewer, again, it must be at a certain level before you can put it in or have that agreement in place that they'll be able to remove it before they return it to the environment. So you want to make sure your wastewater plant can handle whatever contaminants that you're putting in. Yeah, because remember, they have a permit too that they must meet. So keep that in mind. Yeah, keep that in mind. Huh? So some people tend to run it, recycle it through the plant several times until, again, that's old, and then usually they'll have some type of lagoon or pond system on site, yeah, or have it hauled away. But it's an issue to deal with.
When you say activated, that's just the media?
Yeah, it's the media, just like activated carbon running the water through it. Yeah, that's exactly what it is. Brine can be another issue that you all will probably have, especially if you're using any type of surface water, okay? Rinse water or acid neutralization water, all those can be, because now I have to figure out what am I going to do with all of this. If I discharge it to the receiving stream, then I got to have a permit, and I have to have a removal method in place to meet whatever permit.
Well,
So,
and we don't discharge into the stream.
right.
So my question is, so how does that work? The aluminum reacts with all of these things, fluoride, arsenic, uranium, and selenium, and is that the byproduct of it?
Right, this is the byproduct when you do that, or when the regeneration, the acid neutralization water, the regeneration of the material that you're going to use. And so it's an issue. It's like with the RO system. You still have more waste product that's produced than the actual quality water that's produced. You probably have 60%, and that's at a good rate, of quality water, 40% of wastewater. Because when you force that water through that semi-permeable membrane, some of it goes through, but you have all this waste that's not. So that's what are you going to do with that?
Mix
The
it
waste.
back in and
And some people do recycle it. But it's only so much you're gonna recycle, because every time you recycle it, you're getting a more concentrated,
Yeah.
more concentrated, you still gotta deal with. Because you're not removing it, if you're recycling, it's gonna become more and more concentrated, so. What do you do with your RO waste?
Just dump it on the ground?
What was that?
Did you just dump it on the ground? Huh? Just goes out on the ground.
We're moving right along. Yeah. All right, so again, when you recycle, you will end up with concentrated levels, and that's something that, it's a major concern, and you'll have to figure out how to remove it from the process altogether.
And is the
So
backwash-
pre-treatment,
Is the backwash from, the waste from like the RO, is it?
it's all of that concentrated stuff that's on that semi-permeable membrane that did not get through. So whatever stuff we're trying to remove, just think of it being coated on that membrane. So when I backwash, I still have all that concentrated stuff there.
Wash the RO.
No, you don't backwash, but we're talking filtration. Yeah. But your microfiltration, you will be
Oh, yeah, we
backwashing.
backwash that.
Yes.
It's,
Not the
Yeah.
small
backwash tank is connected to the sewer manhole.
Yeah, okay.
But as far as ROs, being backwash,
No, you don't backwash RO. All right, so pre-treatment may be necessary. I know you all say it goes right to your sanitary sewer. Make sure your sewer plant can handle it. Ion exchange is another option that's out there. How many of you all are familiar with softeners? Water softeners.
We've heard of it, but we've never
Utilize them. This is a lot like a water softener. And with a water softener, what you're doing is taking one element, exchanging it for another one, essentially. So with many of your water softeners, if you've ever drank water that's been processed with a water softener, what can you tell me about that water quality as far as taste? It usually tastes kind of salty. Why? Because they've used chloride as one of their, as the exchange
So
ion.
we couldn't use that in our application, that was just, it's already high in fluoride.
But there are a lot of ions you can use as an exchange media. That's just one. Yeah. All right, so it's a physical chemical process in which ions are swapped between the solution phase and solid. In other words, you're choosing one ion to replace another one. Yeah, okay. And again, for many of your water softeners, chloride is used, and that's why, again, you get that salty taste, because that's the ion of choice there. Again, it's a good practice for arsenic, nitrate, uranium, and fluoride. Again, kind of limited, and what it's going to remove when you look at the list of 65 there. We see the problem with pH again. It's pH dependent, so you got to make sure you're maintaining optimum pH. It's difficult to regenerate the resins with uranium exchange, and if you have total dissolved solids greater than 500, total dissolved solids are, could be mineral. Total dissolved solids are those solids that will pass through the filtration process. So an example of a dissolved solid, have you ever had sugar in your tea? What happened? Yeah, when you mix that sugar up, it dissolves. Can you filter sugar out once it's mixed? No. Yeah, so sugar, salts would be a dissolved. So if you have high dissolved solids, it's going to adversely affect the performance. And if your turbidity is a problem, if you have very turbid water, it can be another problem. Okay, need a little more operator skills in order to keep an anion exchange. Ion exchange, anion exchange, same principle. It's just different charges that we're working with, negative and positive there.
A negative ion.
Mm-hmm. So again, the whole purpose with the attraction, negative on one side, positive, they're going to attract each other there. We have the same problems as with the aluminum bed, backwash, regenerated brine, rinse water, cement media issues that you'll have to deal with. And again, pretreatment may be necessary if you have an agreement to put it in your sanitary sewer. All right, other options, iron-based absorptive media, similar to activated carbon, but it's not considered as a good practice there. However, it can be effective for arsenic, radium, uranium, and antimonite there. And same problems that we see with some of the others. As far as pH, it's pH dependent. Also, bacteria may grow on that media during low flow and hot weather, which makes it not so desirable. You can experience breakthrough when removing multiple contaminants. In other words, the very things we're trying to remove can get through the process. With the iron-based absorptive media, testing is necessary to ensure the spent media is non-hazardous or radioactive based on what's being removed. We have mixed bed ion exchange. As again, I said, very similar to the anion exchange, cation exchange. Again, all of that negative and positive charged particles in the same unit, as opposed to one or the other. And it can be used for arsenic, radium, uranium, sulfate, magnesium, calcium. You just got to know the property and characteristics of your water. All right, we have issues there too. pH, it is pH dependent. Works best at a high pH. Sulfate and uranium can displace arsenic, causing a spike in your arsenic, of arsenic in your treated water. Breakthrough, and that's something we never want to happen. And you may need to increase alkalinity. Again, if it works best at a high pH, alkalinity comes into play, because alkalinity is that buffering capacity to maintain a certain pH. Okay. Green sand filtration. How many of you all have heard of this? A lot of our surface water plants are utilizing this now, the green sand filtration. And the reason why, iron and manganese. I don't know if you all have those problems, but in the continental U.S., in some areas, that's a major, major problem there. And so they put in the green sand to combat it. Utilize manganese-coated filter media to oxidize and absorb contaminants there. It can also be used for arsenic as well as radium. Okay, pH greater than 6.8. Radium removal improves as pH increases, but as you all know, for the most part, how do we operate most of our plants? At what pH range?
5 to 7.
You all drop as low as 5?
No, 6.5 to 7.5.
Okay, yeah, more around neutral there. And so in some of these situations, you may have to add chemicals to raise the pH to get to the optimum level for it to be effective. In other instances, you may have to add chemicals to lower. And
What
we'll
if
see
you're-
that with the membrane technology too. Yes, ma'am?
What if your treatment plant has high pH?
What if it has high pH? What do you consider high?
Like, what did we have? No, like 9. Did we have high pH?
If it's 9 something, I'm doing some investigation. The first place I start, if it's not naturally occurring and that's abnormal to you, my first place will be to look at the calibration of that instrument. Because if that's not normal, why did it spike like that? So I'll first look at the instrument. Are we calibrating the instrument? Did we use fresh buffers? So I will check the integrity of the meter first of all to make sure that's accurate. If it's accurate, then I'm going to start looking at some other things in that water that's going on. I may even look at again the alkalinity to see what type of alkalinity I have, and does that make sense? Because based on whether or not it's a hydroxyl alkalinity, or whether it's the total alkalinity or carbonate alkalinity, it's going to give me some indication of whether or not that's a true pH value. Was this a one-time deal that it spiked like that?
At one of our plants, I thought that the pH was high, and I didn't know if it was the source water.
Okay. Usually source water is not that high unless they're being dumped on, which is always a possibility if it's a surface water source. But groundwater source, if it's not typically where it runs, start with that meter and then look at the alkalinity to verify the numbers. If it's a groundwater and it's doing that, one of the possibility could be influence from surface water too. But usually when they start getting, out of what that normal is, dumping is one of the areas we look at too. What's coming into that water. Or what type of chemicals I'm using. What are you using for disinfection? If I'm using calcium hypochlorite, HTH, it's going to raise the pH. If I'm using sodium hypochlorite, it's not going to. So even the chemicals for disinfection can make the pH fluctuate. Yeah.
We use sodium hypochlorite.
Okay, and that usually does not raise it, but the calcium, because it has 35% lime, if I'm overdosing with that, it could raise it. Okay. Excuse me. All right, there are some other treatment options: oxidation, coagulation, filtration. If you ever worked with a surface water plant, this is typical for surface water plants. Yeah, very, 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 absolutely. Most of them will add a chemical. Well, oxidation first, chlorine or some type of disinfectant oxidizing chemical is used. Coagulation chemical, ferric sulfur, what else? Aluminum, alum. There are a lot of different coagulants that can be used. And what a coagulant is adding a chemical that attracts or attack with the particle, turbidity particle, because they're different charge. One's positive and one's negative. Now they have attract. Now I've created a chemical or a particle with a lot more weight. Okay, that's a coagulation. The flocculation, now they're stuck together, right? Because positive and negative attract each other. And so after they flocculate, they have enough weight to do what? To sink, sedimentation. Very good. And then we do what with the top portion that's not settled?
We draw
And we filter it. Very good. Take it through a rapid sand filter or what have you. And so that can be good for arsenic, for uranium, for microbial entities or the organics, such as the cryptosporidium, the giardia, iron as well as manganese. Okay, so it goes through that. Lime softening is another that we can use. And again, a lot of large systems, it's too expensive to do softening. They leave that to the individuals. But it can be good for arsenic, radium, uranium, and hardness. I'm kind of just going through some of these now that may not be of interest. Now, this one I want to talk about, reverse osmosis, because Mike brought that up there. Here we have a semi-permeable membrane, and we're forcing that water through under pressure, right? Layers and layers and layers of the membrane there. All the other treatment options, they may have had 4 or 5 things here. Look at the number of things that reverse osmosis can handle.
radium.
Reverse osmosis creates or produces the cleanest water quality. And we're talking microbes, we're talking 0.001 microns there. Even salts, yeah, can remove all of those. Huh? Yeah. Right, the total dissolve, absolutely. Most metal, total organic carbon. So when you ask me, again, trying to get the information, the education out there to people to show them that this is good quality water, putting together that PowerPoint, like you say, showing what it removes and the quality of water that it produced is awesome. Now again, let me also throw this out. Once you've removed all these impurities, I have known systems to put, again, mix it with their other water that's being treated traditionally, just to add a little of the impurities back in, because you create such a pure water. Yeah.
Question.
Uh-huh.
We have to change the membrane, so it's a lifetime course.
Now with the membrane, they will become foul, just like with anything else. So now we can use a particular type of acid in order to clean the membranes here. So we don't do the backwashing, but we do use chemicals in order to clean them. Yeah. Because they will become fouled over time. Yeah. All right, and when we actually got a whole manual we're going to go through with the various membranes, and we'll see the different types of membranes. Here again, they point out that the cellulose acetate ones are susceptible to the biological fouling. In the other manual, it'll actually take us through the steps of how to clean that. Mm-hmm. Ah. Hopefully not the product water that we're sending, but if there's a breakthrough, yeah. Mm-hmm.
The acid if you
Right.
have to run it.
Do we have that?
Nope, we don't.
Interpretation for me?
I was asking what his question was, and he was just, their group maintains the RO units.
Okay.
He was talking about the filter, if it could be reused, and he said you said yes.
If it can, yeah, you can clean it.
I was asking if we had the cleaning solution for it, and he
Oh.
said no.
Okay. Well, after this class, you'll know what to buy.
Yeah.
How about that? All right, now, are you using chlorine? Is the water you're sending through the filters chlorinated?
Chlorine as the water.
Yeah, hopefully. You know how some people pre-chlorinate their water. Yeah, so is the water you're sending through those filters chlorinated?
Yes.
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah, because we,
Can be damaged by chlorine. Are they that type of membrane?
I'm not sure if it is. You'll have to tell me what type of
Oh, we better
membranes you
find
have.
out.
because what.
Yeah, because if you're doing that, you're decreasing the life of your membranes.
Yeah, so, and then it goes,
Yeah.
yeah, then it goes a while.
Wow, you turned me up.
Because we pull out the one that we think that that's the problem from the other.
Uh-huh.
Then bring it over here and
Well, what's the filter life?
It depends on the quality of the water. So we can't say, and again, there are specs that are out there. Whenever you buy any type of filter, there are specs out there. But it always go back to the quality of your water.
Oh, okay, so here's how often do you change the filter?
once in a while.
Pretty much running what we're
Now you're
thinking
in
to the RO.
Oh, sweat about the problem is bad.
Yeah, we actually buy it.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
You can turn it off, you have to dump on it.
Yeah, it's the same here. They've added, mineral to the
It'll probably dry out.
I was trying to go through what chemicals was needed, find that, and see if they had any type of information, and I'll look that up and I'll come back and give you that. Yes, sir.
I think I can help with that a little
Please.
bit. Just,
Mhm.
you know, with the variety of systems and some the answer often is, you gotta go back to the manufacturer specs. Because there are different and different, there are a number of different systems. And you gotta get to the manufacturer specifications. But, now, I work with some guys and definitely, if there's chlorine going in, that's a problem. They would dechlorinate, filter, and then rechlorinate again.
Yeah,
So,
afterwards.
but, what I've always heard is manufacturer specs, so it's not necessarily one generic.
That's good. That's why he's the boss.
Yeah, well, so, because whoever sold it,
Yeah.
they got plenty of money out of it, they owe you an answer. Seriously.
Yeah.
What are you buying?
The company we bought the RO from, they no longer exist.
They're out of, yeah. Desert, what's the name of the
There's
company?
no longer.
Desert something.
Okay, well, if they no longer exist, you have an operational manual that you can refer back to, right?
No, our other DSO is, he's been trying to look for the.
You know a good source to find those operational manuals when you don't have them? Google.
Well, if you tell us who built it when we
Yeah.
leave here, I'll get you an answer. There's some folks at the university that I work with that, real strong subject matter experts, people who research the new generation of this stuff, they'll have answers, and we, even if that company's been out of
Okay.
business, we'll know
That's one
people in
reason they're
industry
no longer
that can
there.
answer that question.
Yeah,
Maybe.
so, very good.
I'll ask Steven then.
Yeah,
Because
tell-
Steven's
tell
the
me
one
who
that's
built
been
it,
trying
and
to.
some of the details, and,
Let's get that for you.
as much as you can, whatever we can get you some answers.
Excellent. All right, the other disadvantage, a large amount of the water is the waste product. And so again, you all were telling me you had a 60% accountability as far as water loss. With ROs, there's quite a lot of water. You're not going to produce a lot of quality water there. And it could be higher costs there. Okay, treatment option tips. Look at the frequency of monitoring and shorter run times. You want to make whatever necessary adjustment necessary to optimize your treatment. And again, it's going to be based on your baseline of the quality of water that you have, raw water coming in. You also want to take into consideration the ease of operations. When you're trying to see whether or not I want this treatment versus this treatment, is there lots of redundancy built in? What about the skills of your operators? What about standard operating procedures where you could go back and kind of review from time to time? Training that's necessary. How difficult is the system to maintain? Preventative maintenance that's required. All of that should be taken into consideration when deciding what works best for your situation. Okay, you may have to pre-oxidize, so chemicals there in order to remove certain contaminants. Again, prior to putting this on whatever treatment option, because you don't want to clog or foul up whatever options you decided on. And then think, well, do I need series or parallel configuration? Will I have a problem with breakthrough? And if so, if there's a problem, then I probably need them set up in series. So this first one will remove, and although there may be a breakthrough, the second one will catch it versus a parallel configuration. And the bottom line, this says, and in your book, testing may be necessary. Kind of scratch that and put testing as a necessity. Not maybe. We need that insurance. We need to check the integrity of whatever option we have in place to make sure that it's working. Okay, so with your treatment option, again, it is applicable to subpart G and subpart K of the EPA rules. Again, Subpart K, we see the variances for small systems. G deals with the identification of the best technology properties that are there. Subpart H deals with those surface water systems and those GUIs that are under the direct influence of surface water. All right, your book goes into much more details. Read it at your leisure. But are there any questions, comments, or concern concerning your chemical contaminants?